Today we've got Rush Out, a game kindly provided to us by Sit Down Games. Absolutely no relation to us, although yeah, it is kind of unusual. It is weird. Presumably they're French.
Presumably they're French.
Because the people who make the game have French names.
This is an all-v-1 game of real-time dice rolling. A genre of raised voices, scuffed knuckles, and pieces falling off the table and going underneath the fridge, and apparently just ceasing to then exist.
This is my realm, human, and now these are my little plastic things.
You're going to be playing the game with between 3 to 5 players, and bad news, everybody. One of you is a bad wizard, casting horrid spells and stopping all of the other heroes from living out their dreams of safely getting through a dungeon. Each player will be one of these adorable animal heroes, rolling their dice as quickly as possible in order to find the symbols they need to fill up these cards. When you've completely filled one of these cards, woomph, it's done, and you can draw another card from the dungeon deck and then proceed to try and fill those as well. When you get through all of the dungeon traps and monsters in this deck, then you have won the game, you have defeated the evil sorcerer. But there's a couple of little pickly rub bits here that are going to get in your way. First of all, as a player, you can only ever have your dice on one card at a time. And also, in terms of filling up these big cards, 5 slots on this one, pretty juicy. You can only have a maximum of 2 different players working towards one card at a time. You can only have your dice in one place at once, and oh my gosh, this is just sunk cost fallacy, the game. You're sitting around with your dice locked on a card and you're like, I just need somebody else to come and help me do this. I need feet, I need more feet. And look at these 4 creatures that are now you. Very, very charming design here, although I do have a couple of bits of artistic feedback. To begin with, the hedgehog should have human teeth. And if I'm honest, a turtle with a hammer, it's kind of copying my original idea for a series of murders in October 2026. Now you have got these 4 different characters that you can play as, but really they're just different animals. Each one is able to use a wild result on their die to be a different thing. A key, a fire, a foot, or a sword. The fact that you don't all have different abilities here though, is a good thing. Giving players different abilities would only push you further away from one another. It's vital here that you feel unified. And actually, in some games, having that friction between not quite understanding exactly what other people are doing is exciting, but the friction here is distance. You, as players, are all individual human beings, probably, whereas the wizard is just one person, which means the distance for them between thought to action is just the neurons in their brain to their hands, whereas you have this almost infinitely broader distance between you. To get an idea from one person to another, it has to go via all of these messy human limbs. It is not ideal. While the evil wizard sits alone zapping information freely from neuron to neuron, you're forced to convey meaning and information and electrical data via the medium of moving around your mouth. Sluggish as heck. It's like they're a supercomputer and you are a hand made of jelly trying to operate a calculator. Thankfully though, you don't need to be clever. Your job is remarkably simple until an awful wizard turns up and makes everything bad.
Hi, I'm a bad wizard. I've kissed your mum twice, and now I'm working on your dad. But before we get to that, let's talk about the impact of me being really evil. So as the bad wizard, you're mostly playing the same game as these guys. You've got a big deck of cards that you need to get through. But whereas their game is just a little checklist of pinging these cards and completing them, you're introducing problems. Rolling these black dice with different symbols, the wizard is essentially playing the same game but with a stack of spell cards to get through. Initially, these are mostly just monsters you can summon that then get added to the other players' dungeons, slowing down the heroes by adding new cards to the stack they're working on. But that's not all. You can also cast spells that are gonna lock other players' dice, meaning they can't use them for their little dungeoneering exploits. Take that, you stupid turtle! And what evil wizard's dungeon would be complete without a beautiful, deadly dragon? These spells move this red fiery lad one space towards blocking the exit of the dungeon, and then players need to roll wild symbols in order for them to move one space back. But this dragon seems cool. He seems like a really nice guy. No, he's a and he knows it, because when he's sitting on one of your cards, his big dragon bod means that you can't complete it. You can't finish it off, and that seems bad enough. But wait, there's more, because if the dragon gets to this spot, your house, I win the game. Oh, also, I forgot to mention that you've got these really evil cards that let you just ping the dice off of a card while they're working on them, which is absolutely infuriating. And personally, as a really bad wizard, what I like to do is wait just until the last minute when they're just about to finish the card and then bing!
Oh, Tom is such an evil wizard. So the way this works as a back and forth, as an all v1, what you want to do is take your best player, the person who's probably just the best at this, and you make them the wizard. It's like a video game AI set to hard, but one that gets physically tired, which means if you keep forcing them to play, you will eventually win. Also, to be fair, being evil is not all peaches and cream. Wild symbols on their dice can be used for any of the results that match symbols on the cards on the other side of the table. There's just an awful lot of stuff for them to concentrate on, which means you need your evil wizard to be smart and fast and young and talented and evil. Such an evil wizard. Now this game, as we say, plays from 3 to 5, so you can have a 2v1 or a whopping 4v1. Now, I expected that the 4v1 version of this game would be a bit wild. In reality, it isn't. It's not dramatically different, but I do think it's not as good. I feel like this game shines with 3 players when you have a situation where you have the one bad wizard and 2 other players trying to force their brains together to get across that horrible physical gap and combine their brains and bodies into one sweet engine. And that means finishing a card and then chucking their dice over to them and then grabbing it. You instinctively grabbing the dice that as it comes off the table, having been flicked off by the bad wizard, and immediately chucking it to the other person.
Okay, ding ding, that's your dice. Thank you.
This is an overused word, but when you're in a flow with this game and it's going well as a team, it feels epic. And also what I'm describing here, of you just simultaneously quickly doing all these hand movements in perfect synchronization, causing the wizard player to notice that and freak out and sweat just a little bit, it's literal magic, literal sorcery. And the real enemy in this game, the thing you're fighting against, isn't just time, although you are very short on time. It's distraction. It's the things that make you lose this flow. The moments where you have to go, is it a good idea to pull these dice off of this card? Because we might not do it. That little decision is going to cost you a second, which might lose you the game. It's the wizard doing a spell that just briefly puts something in front of you, which means your train of thought is lost and suddenly your flow is too. It's a really simple but genuinely delightful game. God, this game is really quite good.
So this game is a lovely cake, but now let me pour icing all over the top to make it even more delicious. After playing through a fairly basic tutorial version of the game, it then gets a little bit more complicated over time, with the game adding new modules for you to have a little play with. With this little funky spreadsheet letting you go back to any previous iteration of all these different bits and bobs. But what are those bits and bobs?
One of the early things that gets introduced is something that might make things fairer. You get these cards that allow you to seize equipment, but both sides of the table can be putting dice on these cards, with the rule that you only get to keep them and get a bonus for the next game in the event that you lose, which on paper should help balance out the games and make it so that one side doesn't keep winning, but I don't know, and I don't know if that matters. And to be honest, it's one of the later editions when things get really spicy that made me realise that Rush Out is a game that just knows what it is and what it does, and the fact that the sorcerer has the ability to curse the other team with things that don't allow a player to talk until the card has been filled with dice. Or perhaps one of the best additional rules I've seen in the game for a long time, When two players work together to complete a card, they must high-five one another before either of them can remove their dice from it. Deeply silly, and just, again, like having a scenario where players have to high-five one another, but they're really quite unhappy about it. Kiss a chef. Kiss all of the chefs. Overall, this game, as we say, if it was just a basic thing, simple, in some ways it would be easier to teach and easier to jump into, because having to build a little custom thing before a game, sometimes not ideal. But if you're in a caravan and you've got a week, having all of this scenario-based modularity to play around with to gradually make the game more complicated as everyone gets more and more familiar with it, absolutely delicious. If you remember our review of Magic Maze from a while ago, there's some genius here that can't be denied. This is a game that knows it's partially a party trick, an experience that primarily just wants to surprise and delight. But like Magic Maze, it stands up. But I would say, if you're the sort of person who fixates on whether or not things are fair, then this game is not for you. I don't know if it's fair. Most of the times I've played it, because we play with a bad, evil wizard, we lose. But I have a lot of fun losing. And really, the game for me comes to life when you start having discussions with other players about the house rules. Like, when they knock the dice off of your card, do they have to just knock them off a bit? Or are they allowed to knock them off with like just enough force to maybe knock them off the table, but not any more than that? How much are you allowed to hurl profanities at the wizard while you're playing before it's, rude or upsetting the children in the restaurant? It's this space of the game in which it comes to life. And at this point, hopefully, by this point, you'll know whether or not this is for you or not for you. But I think we can all agree that bad wizards are bad and awful, and I hate them, and they're evil, and they should all go away.
That is so rude! I'm not a bad wizard. I'm a great wizard. I steal a couple of beloved household pets now and again. Come on, Poverty's Nerfect. I can't do anything these days. I can't even recommend a board game. In fact, I'm not going to redress the balance. Shut Up and Sit Down does not recommend this game. Bad Wizard recommends this game. And Shut Up and Sit Down also recommends this game. And another thing, why is it always 4 noble heroes versus 1 evil wizard? I've got loads of evil wizard friends. They're just not here right now. Just because you're on your own in a solitary, dark, dusty place, maybe you've been forgotten about, that doesn't necessarily mean that you're evil.
One day I will become more powerful than... No!
As the P-Hammer murders claim their 16th victim, the people of P-Land are asking the police, will these murders continue? The fear at this stage is the answer is, yeah. If you've enjoyed this video, you could also watch our video review of Magic Maze, another real-time game that's wholly cooperative and involves no dice, but is pretty damn spicy. Alternatively, why not check out our ancient review of Escaping from the Temple dice game? The name is something like that. I've wrote it down, but it's over there. It's good. It's got dice. We'll have more on this story at 9. Back to you in the studio.